Okay, we are live. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all our Sip&Talkers out there, wherever you are.
We're so glad to have you back.
We are. So we got this really powerful message this week from Mickey, one of our longtime listeners. And it highlights this profound and honestly unnerving contradiction in public service.
Yeah, I read that.
It's something I think many of you, no matter where you live, have probably felt at some point.
Mickey described his experience of this profound contrast. During the pandemic, right, the Metro staff were aggressive, hypervigilant, just so swift in enforcing minor rules, like making sure your mask was perfectly placed.
Oh, I remember that.
But then, during the life-threatening 1219 attack, he, and I mean millions of others, saw the security staff retreat, they saw communication breakdown, and just chaos.
He called that feeling a pin pricking many hearts, and I think that just hits the nail right on the head.
It really does.
We see this system that's fantastic at enforcing a kind of surface-level order, but it seems to be built on this illusion of safety when a real crisis hits. So today on Sip and Talk, we're tackling that head-on.
This is a really crucial analysis, but we need to set the boundaries for our talk here right away.
Okay.
Our mission is not about blame. It's not about finding scapegoats.
No.
It does us no good to criticize the few security guards who may have been terrified and just lacked proper training.
Absolutely not. That's just an emotional response, and it distracts from the real, the root causes.
What we are here for is structural analysis. We need to clarify for you why this public service system, and this is a question that's relevant to any bureaucracy anywhere, can excel so completely at administrative inspection, the easy, low-risk stuff,
Right.
but is so structurally fragile when it's faced with genuine high-stakes crisis response.
So we're going to unpack this functional failure across three critical dimensions. We've got the asymmetry of power that's given to the personnel, the systemic breakdown in their communication protocols, and the harsh financial reality of outsourcing public safety.
And we won't just talk about the problem. We're going to look at what works.
We're going to look at international gold standards, examining crucial benchmarks like London and New York to see what a cohesive security structure actually looks like.
Let's get into it.
Okay, so let's start by grounding this analysis in the actual facts of the 1219 incident itself. This was a random, just horrifying attack in this heavily trafficked underground maze. It connects the Taipei main station M7 and M8 passages, and then the attacker later moved into the Zhongshan district.
Right. The perpetrator, a man named Zhang Wen, used a combination of smoke bombs and a knife.
A horrible combination.
Yeah. The resulting chaos led to 4 tragic deaths and 11 injuries. And as we start, we just have to acknowledge the heroism of Mr. Yu Jiacheng. He was an ordinary citizen who tragically sacrificed his life trying to physically block the attacker.
He filled a gap that the system was supposed to fill.
Exactly.
That citizen sacrifice is, it's the ultimate evidence of systemic failure, isn't it? If we analyze the system's response based on the official reports and the timelines, we see a system that was excellent at managing the physical infrastructure. The machines, the process.
But catastrophic at people protection.
Yes.
Let's break down the system's reaction. When the incident began, the station staff, they immediately initiated their training protocols. But these were protocols designed for low-risk, predictable events or things related to infrastructure failure.
So things they'd practiced 100 times.
Exactly. One attendant initially tried to help evacuate, but was immediately choked by the smoke from the smoke bombs.
So they focused on system control instead.
Correct. Their primary successful actions were starting the powerful ventilation and exhaust systems, altering the bank wheel line route to skip the station, and crucially, allowing everyone free exit without needing to swipe their cards.
Okay, so they managed the physical system. They kept the train network from grinding to a complete halt.
That is the definition of successfully executing a business continuity plan.
So the trains kept moving, the air quality was addressed, the gates were opened. They passed the test of managing the system.
They did.
So where did the people protection fail?
That failure sits squarely with the outsourced security guards and that communication lag. The security configuration is fatally flawed. It's point-based.
What does that mean, point-based?
It means you only have 1 or 2 guards supplied by a third-party company available per station. An attack like this, it's not static. It was a moving threat.
Right. A linear, point-based security model can never respond to a dynamic threat in an underground maze. It's impossible.
Precisely. By the time those 1 or 2 guards got the notification, assessed the smoke, and started moving toward the location, following the slow protocol that's inherent in their limited role, the suspect had already moved on. He was out of the M7-M8 passage, he'd fled the underground, and was starting a second wave of attacks in the Zhongshan district.
They were always playing catch-up.
Always. And they were always structurally inadequate for the task.
And the police response, which, got criticized for being late, was actually pretty swift, but it was just fundamentally compromised by that communication error.
Yes. The specialized police unit, the Jingjidu, think of them as like Taiwan's rapid response SWAT team or a specialized police unit, they were notified in just 3 minutes.
Wow.
And arrived in a remarkably fast 6 minutes. But here is the fatal flaw exposed by the structural analysis. The key criticism was that the incident was initially misclassified.
Misclassified as what?
Because of the smoke bombs, the initial report was communicated as a fire alarm, not an armed attack. And this is where the structural protocols completely failed. The police officers arriving on the scene weren't initially equipped for a high-risk, armed confrontation.
So they were walking into the wrong situation.
They were mentally prepared for a smoke incident, maybe helping with an evacuation, not engaging a suspect with a knife and incendiary devices. That 6-minute window, where the classification was wrong, allowed the suspect the crucial time to get out of the metro system and continue the violence above ground.
That communication failure is horrifying. It means the first responders were sent in with completely the wrong defensive posture. Let's connect this back to Mickey's initial frustration, that feeling of betrayal. The system is so powerful and aggressively enforced when you forget to put on a mask.
Right.
But completely passive when your life is on the line.
That feeling of betrayal is a really accurate emotional translation of an institutional hypocrisy. Station staff during the pandemic were empowered by the Mass Transit Act to issue administrative penalties. That gave them authority, visibility, and measurable performance results. They had real power and a clear purpose in that low-risk environment.
It's a high-feedback job. You enforce a mask rule, the person complies, you move on. Good job.
But in the crisis, the system expects those same people to defend, yet it has not equipped them. Not physically, not legally, and not psychologically.
They're just defenseless civilians with a radio.
That's it. And that disparity is the system's monumental blind spot. It's why a civilian, Mr. Yu, was forced to step into the role of defender. The system was meticulously designed for efficiency and compliance, but never for chaotic defense.
This sounds like the absolute epitome of a bureaucratic safety illusion. You create an environment where everyone feels safe because the little rules are so rigorously enforced.
Right.
But the underlying structure can't handle the truly dangerous exceptions.
That's precisely why the critique published in The Economist after this incident was so sharp. They questioned the very definition of success.
What did they say?
They asked, a city that can meticulously manage masks but cannot instantly identify a box of gasoline entering the station? Is this a display of efficiency or a bureaucratic safety illusion?
Wow. That quote is devastating because it forces us to reevaluate what we accept as order. We're often, calmed by seeing administrative order, the gates working, the trains on time, the mask compliance, and we mistake that for genuine security preparedness.
It's the difference between managing the daily operation of a sophisticated machine and defending that machine and its users against a sudden, violent external shock. They are experts in internal regulation, but they are utterly brittle against external threats.
So Mickey's question wasn't just about the emotional sting of seeing guards retreat.
Not at all. It's an accurate structural critique of the institution's priorities.
So the system didn't fail because of a lack of speed necessarily or a total lack of planning. It failed because of structural design flaws that prioritize the simple and measurable over the complex and life-saving.
Exactly.
Let's delve deep into the 3 paradoxes that explain this hyperactive low-risk management versus passive high-risk response.
Let's start with the fundamental paradox of the personnel themselves, which is all defined by their legal authority.
You mean what they're actually allowed to do?
Precisely. Let's start with power asymmetry, the manager versus the defender. As we touched on, the Taipei Metro staff, they're covered by the Mass Transit Act. They possess direct administrative penalty power. This means they can fine you for drinking water, for conducting promotions, or ignoring pandemic rules. This power is clear, it's enforceable, and it has measurable compliance as a result.
It makes them feel like administrators, like managers of public space.
It does. They're acting as agents of the state, enforcing low-level municipal law, and that enforcement is critical for their performance reviews.
Okay.
Now, let's look at the outsourced security guards. They fundamentally lack law enforcement power. And critically, their legal rights, even for self-defense against serious violence, are incredibly ill-defined.
So wait, you're saying the guard could actually get sued for trying to stop an attacker?
Yes. If a security guard tries to physically restrain a violent attacker and that attacker is seriously injured, the guard faces a very real risk of civil liability or even criminal charges for excessive force.
That's insane. So the state tells the guard, we want you to maintain order and protect our property, but it fails to give them the legal shield that true first responders like the police possess.
This is the critical structural weakness. That legal ambiguity forces a devastating psychological conversion during a crisis. When the attack starts, the guard is stripped of their managerial authority, and legally, they revert from administrator to civilian.
So they have to prioritize their own personal legal safety over their job description.
Of course. This means the functional failure that Mickey saw, the retreat, was not necessarily an act of moral cowardice.
It was a legally sensible, self-preserving action.
It's a defense mechanism built right into the definition of their role. If you are not legally protected to engage in a life-or-death confrontation, you will not. The administrative power makes them feel like managers when the risk is low, but the lack of enforcement power immediately shrinks them back to civilians when the violence is real.
It's a disconnect built into the budget.
It is. A low-cost security budget creates this exact outcome.
Let's move to the second major structural issue. The failure of the language itself. That initial fire alarm versus attack misclassification, that wasn't just an isolated mistake, was it? It was a deep flaw in the training.
It was a cognitive catastrophe waiting to happen. Analysis of their long-term defense drills showed they were single-subject focused.
What does that mean?
They trained staff for one linear event at a time. Smoke only means fire. A weapon only means an attack.
So it's like their response protocol was a simple flowchart designed for non-overlapping scenarios, A or B.
Precisely. It was a digital system designed for an analog world. When the suspect used a smoke bomb and a knife attack simultaneously, a compound disaster, the security guard's brain experienced a severe system conflict.
It's like their brain had a blue screen of death. It couldn't process two things at once.
That's a great way to put it. The pre-programmed protocol language, likely technical codes for fire, overrode the clear visual evidence of a knife attack. So the guard wasn't intentionally lying or misreporting. Their training, which only allowed them to pick A or B, forced them to pick the most visually dominant and systemically familiar option, which was A, smoke. Fire.
And that translation error, that single word, delayed the appropriate police response and posture.
It allowed the incident to escalate and the suspect to escape the system. It shows that training needs to move from linear checklist to dynamic scenario-based identification systems.
Which brings us to the third weakness, the budget itself. The decision to outsource public safety to the lowest bidder.
And this isn't just a local issue. The Financial Times has discussed this procurement philosophy globally. When we go for the cheapest security bid, what are we really buying?
I think I know the answer.
You are buying a uniformed service worker, not a professional security expert. When cities prioritize maximum cost performance, the cheapest body that can wear a uniform for the most hours, they're buying a highly visible presence with minimal cognitive ability to handle extreme events.
You're paying for deterrence through visibility, not defense through competence.
Exactly. Look at the metrics outsourcing firms prioritize. Staff punctuality, neat uniforms, successful low-level customer service interactions, compliance checks like mask enforcement. These are all easy to monitor and review.
So they're extremely competent at directing traffic or correcting a minor rule violation because that's what the contract says success is.
Yes. But the contract does not, and cannot afford to, define success as successfully neutralizing an armed, moving assailant. Sophisticated cognitive training, scenario-based drills, high-risk psychological readiness, protective equipment, all of that costs significantly more than the baseline contract.
So if the cost definition of a security guard is just a body in a uniform,
then their subsequent unarmed retreat is a functionally designed outcome of that budget allocation.
So Mickey's observation, the hyper-proactive mask enforcement versus the passive attack response, is rooted right there in the budget. The system is paying for high compliance monitoring, but it is not budgeting for actual defense.
That is the rational takeaway. The system currently defines a guard as an administrator of low-level compliance. Until the budget dramatically increases, changing the job definition from customer service monitor to a true first responder sensor, that structural contradiction will persist.
It sounds like the city is saying we only wanted you to look safe, not actually be safe.
And that is the terrible trade-off of the outsourcing trap globally.
Okay, the weaknesses are incredibly clear. But necessity is the mother of invention, and post-1219, Taipei has been forced to adapt and implement some pretty rapid changes.
Thankfully.
So what has the city done immediately, and how does this stack up to more mature global models?
Well, the city's response has been fast, focusing on 3 areas: remembrance, fixing the protocols, and some basic equipment upgrades.
Let's start with the immediate changes.
First, the recognition of the civilian hero, Mr. Yu Jia-chang, is crucial. A temporary memorial wall has been set up at the attack site, and there's a serious ongoing discussion about his enshrinement in the Martyr Shrine.
That's about restoring social trust.
It is. It transforms the tragedy into a shared symbol of civic courage.
And what about the practical safety upgrades? Are they finally training for the compound disaster?
Yes. There's been a significant shift to high-intensity drills, specifically simulating armed attacks combined with incendiary devices, the exact scenario that caused the protocol failure. They are explicitly training staff to handle the smoke and knife combination.
That's good to hear.
They also tested their cell broadcast alert system, although, critically, the mayor admitted that deep underground spaces still suffer from service delays, which is a reminder that tech solutions are always limited by physical infrastructure.
Right. And I noticed the rule change about face coverings was also immediate.
The new rule, implemented days after the attack, allows staff to refuse entry to passengers wearing full face masks or helmets without a legitimate reason. This is what we call a high feedback measure. It's visible, it addresses public anxiety, and it's a low-effort administrative change.
It gives the public a psychological sense of regaining control.
Even if its actual preventative impact on a determined attacker is debatable.
And what about the actual personnel upgrades? Are the guards still just unarmed civilians?
Not entirely. They have dramatically increased the visible police presence. Over 150 extra specialized officers assigned daily to key stations, often carrying visible shields. But more importantly for the outsourced staff, budget has finally been allocated for guards to receive long sticks and anti-stab vests in the coming year, 2026.
Okay, so that's a critical step. It upgrades them from service workers to at least minimally equipped first lines of defense.
It acknowledges that they might have to engage the threat before the police can arrive. It brings them out of the civilian category and into a basic security responder role.
But let's look at systems that have faced these kinds of shocks decades ago. How do mature systems like the London Underground handle prevention and response?
London is the perfect benchmark. Their safety protocols were completely re-engineered following historical incidents, including the 1995 sarin gas attack and the 77 bombings. Their focus is on prevention and rapid, precise reporting.
And they use specific memory aids for their security teams, right?
They do. First, they use the HOT protocol for assessing unattended items. Guards are trained to assess an item not just visually, but structurally, using 3 key criteria. Is the item hidden? Is it obviously suspicious, or is it typical?
Wow, okay, that's so much smarter. HOT, hidden, obviously suspicious, typical, that just makes sense.
It trains guards to be analysts, not just spotters. It's a huge cognitive step up from the Taipei system, which was just, does it look like fire?
Right.
And second, to solve the fire versus attack confusion that plagued Taipei, London employs the 5W reporting principle. Guards are trained to suppress panic and report calmly using 5 specific mandatory categories.
Okay.
What is happening? Where is the precise location? Who is the suspect? With a description, what weapons are involved, and how many are wounded.
The genius of that 5W framework is that it instantly turns chaos into standardized, actionable intelligence for the police. It avoids technical jargon and ambiguous codes. If the guard sees smoke and a knife, they just report smoke, knife, not Code 3 Alpha Fire.
Exactly. The 5W ensures every necessary detail is covered, and it creates a common language that's usable by every single agency, police, fire, and transit.
Okay, now let's look across the Atlantic to New York City. The NYPD manages massive underground systems. How does their structure differ from Taipei's, siloed approach?
New York's model is all about integration and synchronization. The NYPD Transit Bureau is directly responsible for metro security. This integration means there is no conflict between the security guards' training and what the police expect from them.
So the security guard, even if they're outsourced, is essentially operating under the direct command and doctrine of the NYPD.
Functionally, yes. Their scenario training is highly developed, but it's crucial to understand their role. They are not trained for hand-to-hand combat. Their primary role is defined as the eyes of the police.
So they're the forward sensors, the information gatherers.
Yes. During an evacuation or attack, their job is to maintain continuous real-time tracking of the suspect's path, providing a stream of actionable intelligence to the police units that are moving toward the threat.
What's fascinating in all these international examples is the consistent theme. The guards are trained as sensors. Their core function is providing continuous, actionable information to the heavily armed police forces.
They're not expected to win a fight with a long stick.
They are expected to be the police's early warning system and reconnaissance team.
And Taipei needs to make that fundamental mindset shift. Until they stop paying for customer service workers and start paying for intelligence sensors who are trained on protocols like 5W and hot tea, the system will remain structurally flawed, even with new vests and sticks.
It was a failure of the mind, not just the body.
Exactly.
That was an incredibly detailed analysis of a very difficult public safety failure. We have definitely clarified why the system failed, Mickey and the citizens of Taipei, on December 19th. And remember, everything we discussed today is based on objective facts, data, and structural analysis. This is about critical thinking and understanding the deep forces that shape public safety and political action.
Always question the structure behind the headline.
And a huge thank you again to our friend Mickey for the powerful question that launched this entire conversation. You can check out his YouTube channel, Mickey to Life, for fun memes and his latest travel vlog.
Thanks for tuning in to Sip and Talk.
Be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you next time.